Greetings and welcome to a special Friday night edition of the Big D podcast. Before I announce the special guest, please subscribe, like, comment, share, tweet, I already said like, but retweet, whatever you want with the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. We've got all kinds of fun stuff on. We've got more stuff. Plus, not saying this, you may see some of my news articles appear. We've got some fun stuff on the writing and podcasting side. Well, if anybody watched Monday night's national championship game in Indianapolis, you would have seen one of the best defensive performances I've seen in a long time. Baylor absolutely dominating Gonzaga 86-70, and be honest, I don't think the game was even that close. And here to chat about that game is my buddy, Baylor alum, Cody Rabold. Cody, how happy were you with that game on Monday?
Honestly, I was thrilled because I really didn't have to sweat too much. It felt like it was over within the first 3 minutes of the game. So from there on, it felt like kind of a coronation celebration. Didn't have to really sit on the edge of my seat. It was awesome.
It was, yeah, be honest, it was weird because going into that game, the question was, would Gonzaga have enough energy after its exhausting overtime win against UCLA on Saturday night?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the championship game, I think you have as much energy, you should be geared up, ready to go. I know they played an overtime game, but, how often during the season did they play teams that, they were up double digits at half and, could sit starters. So I don't know that played too much of a factor into the game. I just think best of 7 series, Baylor might sweep or at the very least win 4 out of 5 games against them.
Going until that UCLA game, I think West Virginia was the only team that kept Gonzaga within single digits. Every other game was a double-digit defeat.
Yeah, I mean, they played their toughest teams at the beginning of the season, and for the last 2 to 3 months of the year, they really didn't face tough competition, kind of like Baylor did in the Big 12, which you could argue is the best conference in college basketball this year.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, because oddly enough, Gonzaga and Baylor was supposed to meet, I think, in Indy.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be the matchup 1 versus 2, and we know what happened.
Yeah.
Gonzaga got COVID. And now, looking back on it, could it have been a blessing in disguise that you didn't play them?
Oh, 100%. Having to go up against our physical defense for 40 minutes is something that you really can't practice for. So, in a way, it almost helped us out because they hadn't faced anything like us at all during the season. So, coming off a short, Saturday game against UCLA, really only having a day and a half to prep for Baylor, definitely played into our strength.
Well, going into that championship game, Baylor looked like the better team against Gonzaga. You absolutely trounced Houston. Now, was Houston worthy of being a Final Four team? Might be another question, but Houston made the Final Four because basically everybody else lost in its region.
Yeah. You can't help who you play. Gonzaga didn't really face a tough road to the Final Four either. Baylor played a really tough schedule during the regular season and also faced tough, Villanova squad that, has won a couple championships and, they played a bad first half, ended up winning by 11, beat a top 10 team in Arkansas, who's going to be one of the favorites to win the national championship next year. And Houston, they only had 2 losses this year. They earned a 2 seed, regardless of what anyone wants to say. And, they were a senior-laden team with a lot of guys that, had been to the tournament and played in some big games. So, I just think Baylor was head and shoulders the best team over the course of the season, and it really showed in the tournament.
Yeah, to me, watching that game on Monday night, a couple of things stood out to me. One, Baylor crashed the glass better than I've ever seen a team do in my life. I mean, you guys got what, 16 offensive rebounds. I'm like, how does Gonzaga give up 16 offensive rebounds? I'm like, because Baylor's kept crashing the board like every missed shot. You crash the boards, get the rebound. Crash the boards, get the rebound.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really in the fabric and the culture that Baylor and Scott Drew's built over the last decade or so. Um, we've always been a really good offensive and defensive rebounding team. And even though we were a little bit on the smaller side this season, guys like Mark Vidal, JTT really stepped up. Flo Thamba probably had his best game of the season in the championship, even though he only scored 1 point. His defensive impact and rebounding was huge. But really, it's just always been something that Baylor could always lean their hat on, is that crashing the glass super hard and playing really tough. So that's something that Scott Drew's just always looked for in recruits, and guys have always executed in games.
I mean, going into that game, was there one particular player you were worried might hurt Baylor from an offensive viewpoint?
So are you saying just a play that Gonzaga had that maybe?
No, a player from Gonzaga who concerned you.
I think going into the game, I was concerned about Drew Timme just because of what everyone had said. I mean, he, played tough in the tournament, scored a lot of points. And I was concerned about the matchup with Flo Thamba at the beginning of the game. And with JT coming in, I was concerned that, he might really establish his dominance in the paint and really pose a problem for us. But if anything, we bullied him out of the paint. We bullied him on when he was on defense, just with our pick and roll game, and really put him on an island guarding our really tough guards. So I think we really came out on top on that one. But it's definitely Drew Timme. He definitely concerned me going into the game.
Yeah, Drew Timme not just as a scorer but a facilitator, because if you look at what he did against UCLA in the semifinal game, and let me see, he scored 25 points, 11 15. And what he did Monday, he only scored 12 points with 5 turnovers, which told me a couple things. One, Baylor did a good job of not just defending Timmy, but making him work on the defensive end, because those screen and rollers just cause so much trouble. And I don't think Zags had seen anything like your screen and roll.
Yeah, I mean, we really run that dribble weave really well, and really harp on getting some good matchups for our guards. And whether that's Maceo Teague, Davion Mitchell, or Jared Butler, even Adam Flagler, I mean, we have 4 guards that can all take you off the bounce and also shoot. So that was definitely something I know Scott Drew and the coaching staff really harped on our guys, was to get him one-on-one with our guards to really make him guard on the other end. So that way it might tire him out a little bit on offense too.
Yeah, be honest, Mitchell was all over the court that night, not just scoring, not just facilitating, but rebounding. I mean, that guy was all over the court.
Yeah, I mean, you could really make an argument. I know Jared Butler won Most Outstanding Player of the tournament. You could really make an argument that Davion Mitchell deserved that award just as much as he did. I mean, Jared Butler is our best player, but Davion Mitchell over the last month has really elevated not only his draft stock, but just his status in college basketball as one of the best guards to play. I mean, he plays on both ends super hard, and he's a tough matchup on offense.
Yeah, I bet you the Big 12 guards will be happy if he's gone.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
gone to the NBA. Like, can we? I'm like, we've got enough guards in this conference. Can he be in the NBA? Let him face Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, exactly.
Let him face Steph Curry or who's.
Yeah, I mean, he went into the NCAA tournament probably projected as a mid-20s to late lottery draft pick, and I've seen mock drafts where he's a top 10 pick now. So,
I believe it. I mean, I think Mitchell, and even a losing effort, throwing who's the Baylor, who's the Gonzaga kid? I think Jalen Suggs has cemented himself as a top 5 pick. I mean, sure, Monday
Oh,
didn't go
he'll
well.
be drafted in the top 3 for sure.
Yeah, it'll either be him or Cade Cunningham, one or two. So obviously, going into Monday's game, a lot of people looking at the player matchup, but to me, it was just as exciting was the coaching matchup between Scott Drew and Mark Few, and everyone was wondering who would get his first ring first. Now, a lot of people were thinking Few would because he'd been there a few years ago, and I mean the way Baylor was when Scott Drew took over this program, just look. I mean, I looked up this program and it was in bad shape.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 18 years, and it was a job that nobody wanted at the time. And so, fortunately for our sake, Scott Drew took it over, and every year he's just kept building and building and building. And these last 2 years were sort of a coronation of all of his coaching staff and all the players that have really bought into the program and guided this program to a new height and elevated it to a championship status that can never be taken away from them. So really excited for Scott Drew and all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, and it's weird because you think of Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, Michigan State, but Gonzaga and but in a way, what Baylor, Gonzaga school, you mentioned Villanova earlier, what these schools have done is show you don't need a big name. If you've got the right coach and right philosophy, not philosophy with your players, you can win. You can win.
No, well, not even that. I mean, you also one of the best things about Scott Drew is he's arguably one of the best coaches when it comes to player development. He has a really good eye for talent when it comes to getting guys to transfer in and sit out. And he also harps on freshmen that come in, usually redshirt their first year, and really learn the system, kind of toughen up, bulk up a little bit, so that way they're ready for Big 12 play. So really every part of his program, guys have bought into it when he recruits, and he gets the right kinds of people, that are going to put in that hard work to, compete for Big 12 championships and ultimately, national championships. So there's a lot that goes into it, and he's gotten the right people in place, and he also is really good at player development and player evaluation.
Yeah, I was thinking like nobody redshirts anymore. They spend what 5 minutes on campus, then boom, they're in the NBA. Nobody redshirts anymore. Like I
Yeah.
think it's amazing that Baylor's done this without. I mean, I'm not sure you know it, but I'm not sure how many McDonald's All Americans Baylor's got. I mean, Isaiah Austin was really good for that 1 year. I
Oh, he
looked.
actually played 2 years there.
Oh,
He,
two
he
years.
came back for 2 years.
I,
Yeah.
wish- I wish
He's
he would.
definitely him, Perry Jones, and Quincy Miller. I think the 3 5 stars that he's gotten in his time at Baylor. But most recently he's done it with guys that have transferred in, and some lesser, not talent players, but just star wise, not highly recruited guys. And he's gotten them to come in. Sit out, learn the system, and they're ready to go. So
So now my question is, if COVID had not taken place last year, do you think Baylor would have won the national championship?
I do think at the very minimum we would have gone to a Final Four last year. I think we had the talent to win it all last year, but I know Scott Drew's been asked this a couple times on some talk shows and stuff. Well, what would have happened last year? It all played into the bigger picture for this team. Had we made a Final Four, Jared Butler, Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague could have very well, left for the NBA. They felt like they might have accomplished everything for the Baylor program, but wasn't in the cards. They tested the NBA and ended up coming back and really kind of helped us out going into this season. So I want to say yes, we would have won, but I'm glad it ended up working out the way that it did.
I mean, the fact you get a national championship of 1 versus 2 is something that rarely happens in college basketball because you and I both know what happens in a national championship. You get like one versus whatever rank the other
Whoever
team
gets
is.
hot at the right time of the season, definitely.
I mean, in fact, we at least got 1 versus 2 in Indy. Whether it happened in December, January, February, March, or April, just seemed like it ended the craziest season I've ever seen. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel happy for you. I know you are probably mentally, physically exhausted. And it's funny because you think of Baylor and all the success that Tim Mulkey's done the last decade plus, but now you think of Baylor as a quote unquote basketball program more than a football program.
Yeah, yeah. Kim Mulkey, Scott Drew. I mean, you could argue Baylor's the best overall basketball program in the country right now. So we're definitely blessed. The state of Texas is great with high school basketball, has a lot of talent here, which definitely helps. Baylor is getting a new arena here in the next year or two. So, all great things really coming to fruition here for our basketball programs.
Can you get Chip and Joanna Gaines to do one a house episode on Baylor's new arena?
Oh, I'm sure they will. And I'm sure they'll be sitting front row for that first game there. That's for sure.
I'm sure you saw them in Indianapolis,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yep. Yep. They were there. It was awesome.
So thanks for hopping on the podcast, and we'll find a way to talk a few hoops later.
Hey, we got football season, draft season coming up. My Cleveland Browns are looking poised for a Super Bowl run.
Oh gosh, come on, Baker Mayfield, come on! I'm gonna challenge you with Trevor Lawrence in 3 weeks, dude.
I mean, hey, the offseason that the Cleveland Browns have had addressed the defense with a couple nice pieces in the secondary. Still got 9 picks on the draft. I don't know about you, man, but I feel really good about the Browns' chance at making the Super Bowl next year.
You realize who the Browns face next year. You get some guy named Mahomes. He was half decent.
Hey, we almost beat them last year.
You
Almost beat them
almost
last year,
beat
and our defense could not have been worse. So I really think we're going to take that next step next year.
you almost beat him because Mahomes was in concussion protocol.
It's not our fault.
Well, true, you knocked him out of the game.
Oh,
I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. We'll talk later.
awesome. Thanks for having me on.